The Airbus A380 hummed softly as it cruised at 39,000 feet above the Atlantic. In seat 2A of business class, Amora Okafor sat perfectly still, her eyes closed, appearing to meditate. But behind those closed eyelids, her mind was calculating every detail around her. Few people knew that this unassuming woman was actually the newly appointed director of Nigeria's intelligence bureau. Fewer still knew she was currently tracking an international arms dealer responsible for supplying weapons to militant groups across West Africa. She had boarded the Paris-Lagos flight specifically because intelligence suggested he would be on it. What she didn't expect was that he would recognize her. "More champagne, Ms. Okafor." The flight attendant's voice broke her concentration. Amora opened her eyes. "No, thank you." Across the aisle in seat 2C, a middle-aged white man in an expensive suit glanced at her briefly before returning to his laptop. Martin Weber, Swiss banking executive with a flawless reputation. Except Martin Weber wasn't his real name, and banking wasn't his actual profession. "First time flying business class?" he asked casually, his German accent perfectly crafted. "What makes you think that?" Amora replied, her voice betraying nothing. "You seem tense. Most regulars know how to enjoy the perks." Behind his practiced smile, Amora detected something else. Recognition? Suspicion? Their eyes met briefly, a chess match disguised as small talk. "I prefer to work during flights," she said, reopening her laptop. What neither of them realized was that a third player had entered the game. In seat 4B, flight attendant Isabelle Laurent adjusted her uniform and checked her watch. 6 hours until landing. 6 hours to complete her mission. The French intelligence service had placed her on this flight with explicit instructions: confirm the identity of the arms dealer and plant the tracking device. She didn't know about the Nigerian intelligence director. That complication wasn't in her briefing. "Excuse me," a deep voice called. It was an older man in seat 5D, wearing a perfectly tailored African suit. "May I have some water, please?" "Of course, sir." Isabel brought him a bottle, studying his face. Dr. Emmanuel Okoro, according to the passenger manifest. Renowned heart surgeon returning from a medical conference in Paris. As she handed him the water, their fingers touched briefly. His eyes momentarily hardened, a micro-expression most would miss. "Thank you, Isabel," he said, reading her name tag. Something in the way he enunciated her name sent a chill down her spine. 3 professionals. 3 different missions. One enclosed metal tube hurling through the sky. None of them were who they claimed to be. The first sign of trouble came 2 hours into the flight. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some minor turbulence. Please return to your seats and fasten your seat belts." Martin Weber closed his laptop with a snap. His eyes darted to the overhead compartment where his carry-on was stored. Amora noticed the movement, subtle but telling. Dr. Okoro remained perfectly still, sipping his water, watching both of them over the rim of his glass. Isabel moved efficiently through the cabin, checking seat belts. When she reached Weber, she deliberately spilled a drop of water on his sleeve. "I'm so sorry, sir," she apologized, dabbing at his suit with a napkin, and successfully planting the microscopic tracker. "It's nothing," Weber replied, though his jaw tightened. In seat 2A, Amora's phone vibrated with an encrypted message, Ghost protocol activated. Weber identified. Package on board. Package? There was no package in her briefing. Something had changed. The turbulence intensified. Oxygen masks dropped unexpectedly from the ceiling. Panic erupted in the cabin. "Everyone remain calm," Isabel shouted above the commotion. "This is standard procedure." But Amora knew better. The plane wasn't losing altitude. This was a system override. Someone had hacked the aircraft. Martin Weber was now standing, despite the turbulence. "Sit down, sir," Isabel ordered. Instead of complying, Weber reached for the overhead compartment. Dr. Okoro moved with surprising speed for his age, intercepting Weber's arm. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," the doctor said quietly. Weber's face transformed, cold calculation replacing his banker's smile. You have no idea what you're interfering with, old man. On the contrary, Dr. Okoro replied. I know exactly what's in your bag. The question is, do they? He nodded toward the other passengers. Amora stood now too, hand inside her jacket. Both of you, stand down. Isabel looked between them, momentary confusion crossing her face before professional training took over. Security breach in business class, she whispered into her communication device. The turbulence stopped abruptly. The plane stabilized. And that's when the fourth player revealed himself. From economy class, a young man in jeans and a hoodie calmly walked into business class, holding what appeared to be a standard smartphone. The three intelligence professionals immediately recognized it wasn't standard at all. Everyone's gotten very tense up here, he said in an American accent, sliding into an empty seat. Martin Weber, or should I say, Nikolai Vostok? The FSB sends their regards. Weber's expression darkened. CIA has no jurisdiction here. Who said anything about CIA? The young man grinned. I'm just a hacker who sold his skills to the highest bidder. Today, that happens to be Russia. Amora's mind raced. The situation had spiraled beyond her mission parameters. An arms dealer, yes. International intelligence agencies conducting mid-air operations? Not what she had prepared for. Dr. Okoro spoke first, his accent suddenly shifting from West African to crisp British. MI6 has been tracking your weapons shipments for months, Vostok. The nuclear triggers you're transporting won't make it to Lagos. Isabel's hand moved to her waistband, where a tactical deterrent was concealed beneath her uniform. DGSE has priority here. This is a French aircraft in international airspace. The American hacker laughed. You spies and your jurisdictions. Meanwhile, I've taken control of the plane's critical systems with my phone. So maybe let's reconsider who's in charge. The tension in the cabin could be cut with a knife. Amora made her decision. Everyone stand down. Now. Her voice carried the unmistakable authority of someone used to being obeyed. We have civilians on board. That's the thing about intelligence work, Vostok said, finally dropping his Swiss banker act completely. Civilians are always collateral damage. His hand moved toward his jacket pocket. 5 guns appeared simultaneously, each intelligence officer having concealed their weapon differently. The American hacker raised his phone threateningly. I press one button, and this plane drops from the sky, he warned. A tense standoff in business class, 39,000 feet above the ocean. What happened next would later be disputed in classified debriefings around the world. Vostok lunged for his overhead bag. Dr. Okoro fired a dart, not a bullet, that hit Vostok in the neck. The Russian staggered, then collapsed. Amora turned her weapon toward the hacker. Phone. Slowly. The American's confidence wavered. You don't understand. If I don't enter a code every 30 minutes, the plane systems will fail. He's bluffing, Isabel said. Are you willing to bet 300 lives on that? The hacker countered. Dr. Okoro checked Vostok's pulse. He'll live. The sedative gives us about 2 hours. A flight attendant appeared at the curtain separating business from economy. Is everything? Her eyes widened at the unconscious man and drawn weapons. Amora made an instant decision. Medical emergency, she said authoritatively, showing a badge. This man needs space. Please keep passengers in economy class. The attendant hesitated, then nodded. Crisis training kicking in. Should I inform the captain? Not yet, Amora replied. We don't want to cause panic. After the attendant left, Amora addressed the group. We have a situation with multiple agencies, conflicting objectives, and a plane full of innocents. Suggestions? The American studied her. You're not what I expected from Nigerian intelligence. That's the point, Amora replied coolly. The alliance was uneasy but necessary. Each agent had different orders, different handlers, different endgames. But none wanted a disaster. Dr. Okoro, or Agent Phillips as he now introduced himself, secured Vostok in the crew rest area. Isabel contacted her superiors using coded language during routine cabin checks. The American hacker, who only gave his name as Ghost, worked to ensure the plane systems remained under control. Amora coordinated it all, establishing a temporary chain of command that no intelligence training manual had ever anticipated. The nuclear triggers in Vostok's bag, they're heading to a militant group planning attacks across West Africa, she explained. My mission was simple: identify him, track him to his contacts in Lagos, then arrest the entire network. MI6 had different plans, Phillips admitted. The triggers were actually decommissioned, decoys. We've been using them to track his supply chain for months. Ghost looked up from his phone. And the FSB wanted him eliminated before he could reveal Russian involvement in arming these groups. While DGSE intended to turn him, Isabel added. He has valuable intelligence on terrorist financing. 4 agencies, 4 different approaches. 1 unconscious arms dealer and a plane full of oblivious passengers still 7 hours from Lagos. As they strategized, none of them noticed the 5th player observing silently from the shadows. An ordinary businessman in seat 7A had been watching the entire scenario unfold. Ahmed Rashid, listed on the manifest as a Sudanese textile importer, was actually Vostok's partner and the true mastermind. The nuclear triggers were a distraction. The real package was already secured in cargo, biological agents destined for a lab outside Lagos. And while 4 intelligence agencies were busy with Vostok, Rashid's real plan was proceeding undetected. When the flight attendant passed his seat, he stopped her with a gentle touch. "Excuse me, my friend in business class, the man who fell ill, is he all right?" "The situation is under control, sir," she assured him. "I should check on him. I'm a doctor." The attendant hesitated. "I'm sorry, sir. Medical professionals are already attending to him." Rashid nodded understandingly. But his mind was already formulating a new approach. The game had changed, but he had prepared for contingencies. He sent a text message from a secure phone: "Nightingale compromised. Proceed with Phoenix." Back in business class, Ghost suddenly sat upright. "We have a problem. Someone's trying to override my override of the plane's systems." "Another hacker?" Phillips asked. "No," Ghost replied, fingers flying across his device. "This is a pre-programmed protocol, triggered remotely." The plane banked suddenly to the left. Passengers gasped. The captain's voice came over the intercom: "Ladies and gentlemen, we're making a slight deviation from our flight path due to weather conditions. Please remain seated." Amora and Isabel exchanged glances. There was no severe weather on today's forecast. "The plane's being redirected," Ghost confirmed. "New destination coordinates being uploaded." "Where?" Amora demanded. Ghost's face paled as he decoded the navigation data. "A private airstrip in northern Mali. Territory controlled by the same militants who were supposed to receive the triggers," Phillips finished. Isabel moved toward the cockpit. "I need to alert the pilots." "Wait," Amora grabbed her arm. "If Vostok isn't working alone, his partner might be watching. We need to identify them first." That's when the cabin lights flickered and went out. Emergency lighting bathed the cabin in an eerie blue glow. Passengers murmured nervously. In the darkness, Ahmed Rashid moved swiftly toward the front of the plane. The blackout was his doing, a diversionary tactic to access the cargo hold through the crew access panel near the galley. What he didn't count on was Amora's training in night operations. She spotted the movement immediately, a shadow moving with too much purpose. "There," she whispered to Phillips. "Row 7. Phillips nodded. "I'll follow. You secure Vostok." The 2 agents separated, moving through the darkened cabin with practiced efficiency. In the cockpit, the pilots were bewildered by the sudden change in navigation and electrical systems. The first officer was attempting to radio for help when the door opened. Expecting a flight attendant, they were surprised to see Isabel. "DGSE," she said simply, showing her credentials. "Your aircraft has been compromised." Meanwhile, Ghost worked frantically to counter the remote hijacking attempt. "Whoever designed this protocol knew what they were doing," he muttered. It's like it's anticipating my countermeasures. The plane continued its gradual turn toward Mali. Ahmed Rashid reached the crew access panel only to find Dr. Okoro, Agent Phillips, waiting for him. "Mr. Rashid," Phillips said calmly. "Or should I call you Colonel Hulfez of Sudanese military intelligence?" Rashid's hand moved to his waistband. "I wouldn't," Phillips advised. "This is close quarters. Neither of us would survive a firefight." "You have no idea what's really happening," Rashid replied, his accent now distinctly military. "The weapons trade was always a cover. For the biological agents in the cargo hold? Yes, we know." Rashid's eyes widened slightly, the only indication of surprise he allowed himself. "What you don't know," he continued, "is who I'm really working for." Before Phillips could respond, Rashid pressed a button on his watch. Throughout the plane, the personal entertainment screens suddenly activated, displaying a single message. "Control regained. Return to flight path authorized." The plane began to level out. In the cockpit, the navigation system reverted to its original coordinates. Lagos was once again the destination. Ghost stared at his phone in disbelief. Someone just gave back control. Amora approached Rashid and Phillips, her weapon drawn but lowered. "Explanation. Now." Rashid smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Operation Checkmate. Director Okafor. The ultimate field test." "Test?" Phillips repeated incredulously. 5 intelligence agencies. 5 approaches to the same threat. And 1 evaluation to see which methodology prevails. Rashid reached slowly into his jacket, extracting not a weapon but an identification card. United Nations Counterterrorism Task Force. This entire flight was an elaborate training scenario. The revelation stunned them all. "Vostok is one of yours?" Isabel asked, having returned from the cockpit. "Former FSB, now UNCTF trainer," Rashid confirmed. "The weapons, the triggers, the biological agents, all props. The only real thing was the test itself. You hijacked a commercial airliner with actual passengers for a training exercise." Amora's voice was deadly quiet. "No real hijacking occurred," Rashid clarified. "The pilots were briefed. The route deviation was minimal and approved by air traffic control. The passengers were never in danger." Ghost laughed bitterly. "Except from us, armed intelligence officers having a Mexican standoff in business class. Tranquilizer darts, not bullets," Phillips realized, examining his weapon more closely. "Standard UNCTF training equipment." "And the hack?" Ghost demanded. "Limited permissions granted by the airline for this specific flight. You never had actual control, merely the illusion of it." Rashid surveyed the 4 agents. "What matters is how you all responded. The cooperation you established despite conflicting objectives." Amora holstered her weapon. "Our agencies will have diplomatic complaints about this unauthorized test." "On the contrary," Rashid replied, "your directors authorized it months ago. After the Monrovia incident, it became clear that interagency coordination in West Africa needed improvement. The reference to the failed multinational operation from last year silenced them." "So what now?" Isabel asked. "Now," Rashid said, "we complete the journey to Lagos, debrief properly, and begin forming the first truly integrated counterterrorism task force in West Africa, with Director Okafor as the commanding officer." All eyes turned to Amora. "I never agreed to that," she said carefully. "Your president thinks otherwise." Rashid handed her a sealed envelope. "Your new assignment, effective upon landing." As the plane began its descent into Lagos International Airport, the 5 intelligence professionals sat together in business class, passengers none the wiser about the drama that had unfolded. "A test within a test," Phillips mused. "I should have seen it coming." "We all should have," Amora replied, still processing her new assignment. "The next real crisis won't announce itself either." Vostok, now awake and restored to his seat, smiled ruefully. "In my experience, Director Okafor, Real operations are rarely as complex as training scenarios. Reality has a way of being both simpler and messier. Ghost, who had finally revealed his actual name as David Chen, technologist on loan to the UNCTF from Singapore's Cyber Defense Force, nodded in agreement. The hardest part is knowing who to trust. Perhaps that's the real lesson, Isabel suggested. Trust must be earned, even among allies. As the wheels touched down on Nigerian soil, Amora looked out at her homeland. Security challenges were evolving rapidly across the region. Old approaches weren't working. Perhaps this unorthodox test was exactly what they needed. "Welcome to Lagos," she said to her new team. "The real work begins now." Outside the plane, 5 separate security teams waited on the tarmac. Nigerian, British, French, Russian, and UN watching them through the window. Amora couldn't help but wonder. Was the test truly over? Or was this merely the first move in a much longer game? The seatbelt sign turned off. Time to find